When people picture India, they often imagine a landscape overflowing with life, packed with massive stone architecture and deeply saturated traditions. You see it in the clothing, the brilliant reds and pinks of traditional dresses, paired with heavy, intricate jewelry. But that vivid abundance doesn't grow out of a tropical paradise. It originates in India's driest, most punishing environment. Extreme scarcity, rather than natural wealth, is the pressure cooker that actually forged this resilient identity. To understand how, we have to look at the sheer scale of Rajasthan. It is India's largest state, covering over 132,000 square miles in the country's northwest. Slicing diagonally across this massive territory is the Aravalli Range, a line of peaks that physically divides the landmass. This data visualization shows how that mountain range dictates the climate. The peaks physically block incoming monsoon winds from the Arabian Sea, creating a strict binary. The southeastern 40% of the state receives enough rain to support agriculture, but on the northwestern side of the mountains, the moisture stops, leaving the remaining 60% as the arid Thar Desert. Down on the ground, the Aravallis form a rugged, steep wall of rock and sparse vegetation. For 1,000 years, anyone who wanted to control this region had to navigate this exact divide, an inhospitable desert split by a jagged mountain. The people who mastered this terrain were the Rajput kings. For centuries, their domain was simply known as Rajputana, the land of kings. Because water and arable soil were incredibly scarce, every acre of productive land had to be guarded against a constant influx of invading empires looking to expand their borders. The Rajputs secured their territory by building massive, sprawling stone forts directly into the high, sheer cliffs of the Aravalli Mountains. Rulers like Maharana Pratap used this broken, elevated terrain to their advantage, abandoning traditional pitched battles for highly mobile, guerrilla-style warfare. By drawing large, heavily armored imperial forces, like the Mughal army, into the narrow valleys and steep passes, smaller Rajput clans consistently repelled enemies that vastly outnumbered them. The legendary military independence of these kingdoms relied entirely on exploiting their local topography. But surviving the invading armies was only half the battle. They also had to survive the landscape itself, starting with a severe lack of water. To capture and protect the brief, unpredictable monsoon rains, they engineered stepwells. These are deep, descending geometric staircases that plunge into the earth to access fluctuating groundwater while preventing evaporation. In the kitchen, the lack of water forced a complete dietary adaptation. Locals developed long-lasting preserved foods using wild desert weeds, like a 5-ingredient dish called panchkuta, and they substituted water with dairy and ghee to cook their meals. Even the region's famous aesthetic is a biological coping mechanism. In an environment dominated by endless, monotonous brown sand, the locals deliberately wore loud, vibrant colors to visually break up the landscape. Eventually, they applied this same logic to urban planning, painting entire cities in bright, singular hues that stood out for miles against the barren earth. The food, the architecture, and the colors that define Rajasthan today were originally engineered solutions to a strict geographical deficit. The political structure of the region shifted in 1949. 19 fiercely independent, heavily fortified princely states dissolved their borders to form the unified, democratic state of modern Rajasthan. With their borders secure, the state executed a massive economic pivot. They took the exact geography that had historically kept the world out and used it to invite the world in. Today, those ancient, imposing hill forts and sprawling palaces drive a booming tourism economy. They attract over 45 million domestic and international visitors every single year. The physical architecture of warfare and exclusion was entirely repurposed for hospitality and commerce. Which brings us back to the Thar Desert. For most of recorded history, this vast expanse of sand was viewed as a barren dead zone and a severe economic liability. Now, the relentless, punishing desert sun has become the state's most valuable natural resource. This is the Badla Solar Park. Stretching across the desert floor, it is the largest cluster of photovoltaic power plants in the world, generating over 2.2 gigawatts of peak power. By harnessing the extreme heat and empty space, Rajasthan was able to radically increase its grid capacity and achieve 100% electricity access for its massive population of nearly 70 million people. It proves a reliable rule of human adaptation. Given enough time and engineering, a society's greatest geographical obstacle becomes its ultimate strength.